I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben, of Team Relentless, and this is The Playbook, YouTube's most watched Star Wars Legion content hosted by me. Today we're talking about Imperial Special Forces, sometimes called Inferno Squad.
Special Forces.
That's the point, Sergeant.
Before we get too far into this, I want to give a shout out to my buddies Kyle and Eric at Legion Visual Guide, who recently did a video on I.S.F. themselves. If you've ever had a hard time keeping track of all the keywords in this game, you'll for sure want to check out their content. Oh, and you just might recognize the narrator of the I.S.F. video. Alright, let's get down to business. So I.S.F. recently came out alongside Mandos, and they are, they're real good. Like, now I promise I'm gonna teach you how to do that sweet Alpha Strike tech, but we gotta build to it, am I right?
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
I'm right. Number 1, loadout. Whether you're running a generic I.S.F. or the unique Inferno Squad, you just need to bring the heavies and offensive push. Hey Ben, is there a time when we wouldn't take those things? No, there isn't. Hey Ben, is there a time when we should take more than those things? Nope. Well, they have a second training slot, and still no. And they also have comms? But heavy upgrade, offensive push. Number 2, army composition. So the conventional wisdom here is that you take 3 I.S.F. loaded out as previously mentioned, Iden, her droid, offensive push, and her TL-50. Those 4 acts will run you 437 points, which might be giving you a bit of sticker shock, but trust me, it is worth it. Spend the remaining 363 points on 6 core units of your choice, ideally with as much range 4 shooting as possible. You don't need a bid when you're running I.S.F., so don't hesitate to spend it all.
What?
I know, right? I think this is maybe the first time I've ever told you to not worry about being blue player. That's how crazy this list is. But anyway, that's how you build what is probably the strongest I.S.F. list. However, you certainly can get creative and mix things up a bit. For example, if you run Krennic with Iden, then you could take 3 I.S.F. and 1 Death Trooper, or even 2 I.S.F. and 2 Death Troopers, and then fill in 3 core slots with Stormtroopers. A list like that will punch even harder when it alpha strikes. But if anything goes wrong in the early game, you are going to miss having a robust group of core units. You also might have noticed that I haven't mentioned Inferno Squad. That's because the strengths that Del and Gideon bring are a little bit opposed to each other, which, given their backstory, maybe makes sense. Del is a sniper who can repair vehicles, which means you'd probably rather have him hanging back. But Gideon is a range 3 leader who coordinates with core troopers, so he'd rather be in the thick of it. So while the Inferno Squad does hit a little bit harder than the generic I.S.F. unit, it costs 13 more points and really lacks synergy. If that makes you have a sad face, then you can turn that frown upside down, because Gideon is an excellent heavy to attach to a unit of snow troopers, and Del is fantastic in a group of stormtroopers who want to hang back and do objectives in a vehicle-based list. So those 2 models will see play on your table, but probably not in the Special Forces slots. Number 3, deployment. Your I.S.F. units and Iden all have Infiltrate, and you're going to use it to set up an incredibly powerful alpha strike. First of all, for Iden to have Infiltrate, you have to activate her Covert Ops ability when you deploy her. Once you do this, she is treated as an operative for all intents and purposes for the remainder of the game. If you're running solo Iden, you now have to immediately promote either a core or Special Forces unit to Commander. Do not pick a Special Forces unit. Why? Because it changes their rank to Commander, and Iden's 3-pip card, which is central to the shenanigans we're about to pull, won't work with it anymore. So yeah, promote a core unit, ideally a mortar since it has courage too. Okay, so now how to actually perform the infiltration deployment so that you can alpha strike like a Wampa in heat. Your goal is to get into a position from which you can get a turn 1 range 3 shot. Ideally, you're going to hold all your infiltrating units to the very end of your deployment so you know where your enemy is setting up. However, if your opponent also has an infiltrate unit, then you need to deploy one of your infiltrations right away to claim a spot before you get zoned out. When you pick the location of your infiltration, there are 3 things to consider in this order. The range to the enemy, this should be at or within range 4, getting heavy cover or even better, being completely out of line of sight, and the range to your own core units, because you want them to be as close as possible for what we're trying to set up on turn 2. Typically you're going to end up a little bit towards the center of the map relative to your own deployment zone. Number 4, Alpha Strike. So you've infiltrated around range 4 of your opponent's army, and it's turn 1. Time to play Tactical Strike. This incredibly powerful command card gives orders to Iden and 3 Special Forces units, and then it gives all of them steady and tactical 1 so long as they reduce their move speed to 1. That means each of those 4 units is going to either double move while tapping offensive push to fire with 3 aims, or single move, tap offensive push, fire with 2 aims, and move back out of line of sight. Congratulations, by setting up this Alpha Strike, you've made your opponent the sweatiest person in 3 parsecs. So let's talk order of operations here on the Tactical Strike turn. There are 2 dream scenarios. The first is this. Be hidden out of line of sight, save Iden and I.S.F for the end of the turn, double move and fire, and then on turn 2 activate them again right away to fire and move back out of line of sight. The second dream scenario is this. Be hidden out of line of sight, save Iden and the Special Forces for the end of the turn, single move and fire, then single move back out of line of sight. Then on turn 2 activate your core first after having played coordinated fire. Toss the aims to the I.S.F and Iden, and single move and fire again on turn 2 equipped with aims. So that opening turn 1 salvo is going to make your opponent roll something like 20 saves or more, even in heavy cover. If you're able to transition into a turn 2 coordinated fire, that's going to force an additional 15 or more saves.
That's wonderful.
And because of critical and marksman, you can shoot armor too, and fix dice like crazy, and literally bring down heavies on the first turn. So that's the dream, but quite often you're going to have to compromise on your dreams. We're still talking about Legion, right? With red saves and reliable 1, it's not the end of the world if you have to hang your I.S.F units out in heavy cover. Ideally, only a few of your opponent's units will be able to shoot back, and they've already taken some wounds, so you should come out ahead. If you don't have a line of sight blocker to work with, this is the situation you're going to find yourself in most frequently. Instead of trying to go last first, you're going to activate your I.S.F and Iden right away to come out swinging for the fences, getting as much damage through onto enemy models as you can before they can fire back. Oh, and this would be an appropriate time to remind everyone that 2 speed 1 moves is the same distance as 1 speed 3 move. In other words, you can move about 8 inches on that first turn in order to try to catch your shots. Number 5, marksman.
Hey, so I actually have to interrupt myself right now because it turns out that using aim tokens with the I.S.F is even more complicated than I thought it was when I wrote and filmed this episode initially. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make an addendum video where I actually roll the pool out into different targets and we talk about the correct way to spend the aims. It really depends on what you're firing at, really depends on the cover situation and what your initial rollout is. So there's too many variables to give you a strict rule. I'm going to give you a TLDR rule. TLDR doesn't always work, but generally speaking, firing at armor, upgrade to crits, firing at troopers, reroll black dice, and upgrade the white dice. That will mostly get you through, but it's way more complicated than for me to be able to say that's the rule. In addition to that, I want to plug Legion Visual Guide has a marksman explanation too, just to help us understand what marksman is. So if you're not sure what the marksman keyword is, head on over to Legion Visual Guide and check out their video on marksman. All right, back to our regular scheduled programming.
Bonus. Remember that if your opponent deployed really far back and it isn't reasonable to do Tactical Strike on turn 1, you can just hold on to it until turn 2. Remember that if the Alpha Strike goes poorly, you can always just think of it as a little boop on the nose and then step back to your gun line. Summary. Let's review. Number 1, bring the heavies and offensive push. Number 2, bring Iden and 3 I.S.F. Probably. Number 3, infiltrate in order to set up. Number 4, turn 1 Tactical Strike. And number 5, speaking broadly, re-roll black dice and improve white dice with marksman. Now you know how to play Imperial Special Forces units better than you did before. I hope. If you liked the video, please prove it. And subscribe, if you're into that sort of thing. I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben of Team Relentless, and this has been the Playbook, Imperial Special Forces.